We're into day 13 of the war in West Asia, and there's a significant development now emerging from the middle of the war zone. And this development directly impacts India's energy security. Now, after talks between the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, and Iran's Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, on the 10th of March, Iran allowed India-linked oil tankers to pass through the Straits of Hormuz. Two vessels, Pushpak and Parimal, have been able to transit the strait safely, offering a measure of relief for New Delhi as the region remains gripped by conflict. Now, this development comes at a time when tensions across the Gulf are extremely high. The war involving Iran, Israel and the United States has sharply disrupted shipping activity in the region, and vessels linked to the United States, Europe and Israel are reportedly facing restrictions in the waterway. Let's get you more details now about this breakthrough. And that is that there's also another example, a Liberian flagged tanker carrying Saudi crude and captained by an Indian sailor successfully crossed the Straits of Hormuz earlier and has already berthed at the Mumbai port, becoming one of the first India-bound vessels to navigate the waterway since the maritime traffic began slowing down due to the entire conflict. Those are the visuals that you see on your screen as well. Now, this particular vessel had been India-bound and had been captained by an Indian sailor. And thanks to diplomacy, this managed to make its way quite safely through the Straits of Hormuz and reached its destination.
The first crude oil vessel headed to India since the Iran-US war began has now reached Mumbai after successfully passing through the conflict-hit Strait of Hormuz. The Liberia-flagged tanker Shenlong Fusmax carrying Saudi crude and captained by an Indian has safely berthed at the Mumbai port. From the crucial route, it has finally arrived in Mumbai. The vessel had loaded crude oil from Rajpanura port on March 1 and departed 2 days later for India. According to maritime tracking data, the tanker was last signaled inside the Strait of Hormuz on March 8. During the most sensitive part of the journey, the ship briefly went dark by switching off its AIS system, often used by vessels while navigating conflict-prone waters. The tanker reappeared on systems on March 9 after clearing the strait. After entering the Arabian Sea, the ship continued its journey towards India's western coasts and reached Mumbai port at around 1 p.m. Later in the evening, it berthed at Jawahar Dweep terminal at around 6 p.m. The tanker is carrying 1,35,335 metric tons of crude oil, which is now being discharged. The cargo will be supplied to refineries in Mahul, and the authorities are saying the unloading process will at least take 36 hours. This ship is owned by Shenlong Shipping Limited and managed by Dynacom Tankers Management Limited. As of now, there are 29 crew members on board, including some of the Indians, Pakistanis and Filipinos. And one of the important thing is captain of this vessel is an Indian, Sukhshant Singh Sandhu. The tanker's safe arrival is significant for India because over half of the country's crude oil and gas imports pass through the Strait of Hormuz, even as tensions at the Gulf continue to impact the global shipping field. Along with video journalist George Brito, this is Rucha Kanolkar for Times Now, Mumbai.
So prolonged negotiations are being held between India as well as Iran and other stakeholders as well to ensure that traffic in the Straits of Hormuz is not significantly disrupted. However, it does remain quite disrupted, and despite that, at least two India-linked vessels, and now you also see a Liberian flagged tanker which was carrying Saudi crude, and of course also was manned by an Indian sailor and a captain, has eventually reached its destination, which is the Mumbai port as well. So energy security of paramount importance. And we're already seeing a disruption in supplies. India is heavily reliant on the transit through the Straits of Hormuz for almost 50% of its overall crude oil requirement. And it also serves as a transit point for almost 20% of the world's crude oil imports as well. However, we've been diversifying our sources of supply and speaking to several other stakeholders as well. And there was one other statement that had come recently that almost 70% of our crude oil imports are now being rerouted through other areas as well. Let's in fact once again have you listen to that report that's been sent in from my colleague Rucha from very close to that Liberian vessel that eventually reached Mumbai.
The first crude oil vessel headed to India since the Iran-US war began has now reached Mumbai after successfully passing through the conflict-hit Strait of Hormuz. The Liberia-flagged tanker Shenlong Fusmax carrying Saudi crude and captained by an Indian has safely berthed at the Mumbai port. From the crucial route, it has finally arrived in Mumbai. The vessel had loaded crude oil from Raspanura port on March 1 and departed 2 days later for India. According to maritime tracking data, the tanker was last signaled inside the Strait of Hormuz on March 8. During the most sensitive part of the journey, the ship briefly went dark by switching off its AIS system, often used by vessels while navigating conflict-prone waters. The tanker reappeared on systems on March 9 after clearing the strait. After entering the Arabian Sea, the ship continued its journey towards India's western coasts and reached Mumbai port at around 1 p.m. Later in the evening, it berthed at Jawahar Dweep terminal at around 6 p.m. The tanker is carrying 135,335 metric tons of crude oil, which is now being discharged. The cargo will be supplied to refineries in Mahul, and the authorities are saying the unloading process will at least take 36 hours. This ship is owned by Shenlong Shipping Limited and managed by Dynacom Tankers Management Limited. As of now, there are 29 crew members on board, including some of the Indians, Pakistanis and Filipinos. And one of the important thing is captain of this vessel is an Indian, Sukhshant Singh Sandhu. The tanker's safe arrival is significant for India because over half of the country's crude oil and gas imports pass through the Strait of Hormuz, even as tensions at the Gulf continue to impact the global shipping field. Along with video journalist George Brito, this is Rucha Kanolkar for Times Now, Mumbai.
Well, let me go across to my colleague Arunil as well, who gets us some more details. Arunil, India has, of course, been working overtime to ensure safe passage of India-bound ships through that extremely sensitive region as well, because our energy security is being directly impacted as a result of what's been happening in West Asia. So some relief that a couple of India-linked vessels have been allowed safe passage. And we also now seeing a Liberian-linked vessel captained by an Indian sailor reaching Mumbai.
Well, certainly this is a kind of a reprieve for India as well. There was a major concern with respect to shortage of gas, shortage of oil as well. In fact, many restaurants were also facing a kind of a shortage. Now, this Liberian flagged vessel reaching Bombay port on at 6 p.m. on Monday. In fact, it wasn't allowed through the Hormuz Strait. It had to go dark, according to some of the officials in the Bombay Port Trust as well. They are informing us that it had to go dark in the Hormuz Strait, as well as this automatic identification system had to be switched off so that the vessel was not noticed by the Iranian Navy as well as other agencies that have been trying to stop all the vessels that have been passing through the Hormuz Strait. This vessel, as Rucha was also pointing out, it's at present docked at the Jawahar Dweep. It has more than 135,000 metric tons of crude oil. Now it will be taken to the nearby Mahul oil refinery, that is near Chembur, wherein it will be processed further. So yes, this can be seen as a kind of a reprieve with respect to the severe shortage that was noticed, that was primarily how Iran was not allowing oil tankers to pass through the much important Hormuz Strait.
Thanks a lot for that, Arunil. Now, India has, of course, been working overtime to ensure safe passage to ships linked to it to pass through the Straits of Hormuz. and we managed to achieve a few very important breakthroughs indeed. So Iran has allowed Indian linked oil tankers passage through the Straits of Hormuz. Ships that are Pushpak as well as Parimal have managed to transit safely through that extremely sensitive route. The other important breakthrough is the fact that Dr. S. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, has been in touch with his Iranian counterpart. They've had at least 2 conversations now since the outbreak of the war on the 28th of February. The passage has taken place after talks between the External Affairs Minister and the Iranian Foreign Minister as well. Now, the ships at the center of this development are Pushpak as well as Parimal. As per reports, these containers are part of India's energy supply chain and had been reportedly carrying crude connected to India's import or crude oil imports as well. Now, while they were initially described as Indian flag tankers, vessel tracking data shows that both are currently sailing under foreign flags. So this means that they are more accurately described as India-linked or India-associated vessels rather than technically as India-registered ships. Now, despite the tense security environment that prevails in the Persian Gulf, both vessels were able to move through the Straits of Hormuz quite safely, something that has become increasingly difficult as well as rare as the conflict has continued to escalate. The diplomatic timeline behind this development is also important. So we'll take you through that now, because on the 5th of March, which is 6 days after the war had broken out, our External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, spoke to Mr. Arakchi, Iran's foreign minister. So this was 6 days after the war had broken out. Our Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri, was at the embassy of Iran as well, and he signed that condolence note at the embassy, and the Ministry of External Affairs subsequently also put out a message on the social media condoling the death of Ali Khamenei as well. Now, on the 10th of March, 5 days after that first call between Dr. S. Jaishankar and Mr. Arakchi, the External Affairs Minister spoke to him once again. On the 11th of March 2026, which was 12 days after the war broke out, India-linked tankers transited safely through the Straits of Hormuz. Let's also now play out what our External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, had said in a statement in Parliament as well about India's engagement with other nations with respect to what's been happening in West Asia and calls for an immediate de-escalation there.
Honorable Prime Minister himself has spoken to the President of UAE, the Amir of Qatar, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince of Kuwait, the King of Bahrain, the Sultan of Oman, the King of Jordan, and the Prime Minister of Israel. In each case, we received assurances that the well-being of the Indian community would be a priority for the host government. I have similarly been in close touch with my counterparts in these countries. Insofar as the United States is concerned, we have maintained regular contacts through diplomatic channels. While attempts have been made, contacts with Iran at the leadership level are obviously difficult at this time. I have, however, spoken to Foreign Minister Arakchi on 28 February and 5 March 2026. We will continue these high-level conversations in the coming days.
Now, what emerges from this entire sequence of events is a clear strategy that India has been maintaining dialogue with all sides, balancing relationships very carefully and quietly working to ensure one critical objective, which is the uninterrupted flow of energy supplies into the country. Because this is a region that's been gripped by war. The Straits of Hormuz are not just a waterway, it's one of the most important energy lifelines in the world, and India's diplomacy right now is focused on keeping that artery open. But the opposition appears to be quite dismissive of India's diplomatic efforts during this very sensitive time. Let's listen into what they've had to say.
2 ships manned by Indians and were heading towards India were brought down in Iran, and whatever he is saying currently is the unfortunate reality is very different, and this again goes to show that our foreign policy talks in some manner, the action shows some other things, and the result of which it's the Indians which end up suffering.
जिस तरह से ईरान द्वारा 2 जो है ऑयल वाले शिप पे हमला किया गया, समाजवादी पार्टी समझती कि ईरान से भारत के रिश्ते बेहतर हैं, अच्छे हैं। कुछ समय के लिए जरूर कुछ गतिरोध उत्पन्न हुआ था, लेकिन जब बातचीत करके अब उसका फिर से समाधान निकल गया है और ईरान ने कहा है कि वो भारत के तिरंगा लगे हुए जितने भी शिप होंगे उनको पास होने देगी, तो समाजवादी पार्टी समझती कि भारत को जो रिश्ते हैं विश्व में पड़ोसियों से वो बेहतर करना चाहिए।
I hope so, because we've already had one ship that is not an Indian ship, but a Thai ship bound for Kandla with Indian sailors on board that was hit twice, and there are 3 people who may have lost their lives. It's a very tragic thing. Iranians must show some respect for those who have been friendly and reasonable to them, but at the same time, the problem with this conflict right now is that people are being dragged into it whose war it isn't.
We're also being joined by former Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha. We'll just go to him in just a short while. But first, let me go across to my colleague Sagarika, who will take us through the reactions that have come in from the Bharatiya Janata Party now, responding to the criticism that's been leveled against our government by members of the opposition. Sagarika, take us through those reactions.
And Siddharth, it's brief, but it's assertive. So the BJP is saying that this shows how India first diplomacy is delivering. I'm going to take you through the post of Amit Malviya. Just in 2 words, he talks about that, the news of how India-linked ships have been allowed passage through the Strait of Hormuz. And then he says this is India first. But opposition has been unrelenting in its criticism. In the parliament, they've been raising questions with regards to LPG. Mallikarjun Kharge says, and I'm going to quote from his post, he says, when the country is grappling with a severe crisis, Prime Minister is engrossed in election tours, there is severe shortage of LPG across the country and people are standing in queues. Countless small and large industries are being forced to bear the consequences of BJP's failure, but the government has no answers, only false claims. The failure of diplomacy is a serious issue, and the result of mismanagement of energy is being borne today by more than 1 billion people of the country. So this is how the war of words is playing out. But for now, it is the BJP which is saying that this shows that how India first diplomacy is at play. Over to you, Siddharth.
Right, this war of words is not likely to stop anytime soon. Let's get a word in also from Vice Admiral Sinha. Many thanks for speaking to us, sir. What's your take on what India has managed to achieve so far, which is having persuaded Iran to allow the safe passage of at least 2 India-linked containers through the Straits of Hormuz? Our diplomacy appears to be working, but a lot more needs to be done, one would say. What's your take on what's happened so far?
Well, thank you, Siddharth, for getting me on your show. You see, I've been watching this for from the time it started, and from the time the International Fleet Review took place in Vizag, and I was there personally. This is a big achievement of our foreign policy bosses. Otherwise, even this would not have happened. Right now, even the US has raised its hand, saying that our Navy will not be able to escort any merchant ship carrying any load from inside the Gulf to outside. So that is the inability. And rightly so, because when you have a very narrow path through which the ships are passing, they have to slow down, and there's only one ship one way. There's so many, because it's only a very, 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 width is quite small. So what has happened is that in a very narrow area, they can be targeted very easily. And as you know, that the entire thing is controlled by IRGC, and they're directly under the Supreme Commander. Now, there is a little bit of turbulence in the leadership there. So the IRGC, by and large, has become autonomous. So therefore, what is promised by the government of Iran, it takes a little bit time to trickle down to the IRGC commander and to all the ships, because all their boats are out at sea.
Absolutely.
And also and the IRGC controlled missile sites are well inside the land. It's in the hinterland. From there they target and fire. So I think it's a great achievement to get a clearance for Indian flag ships coming out. Now let me also tell you that this Thai ship, I have spoken on some channel. This Thai ship was hit.
Correct.
Actually speaking, IRGC used the drones to hit it, I believe. Now, they did not know that it is bound for Indian port. And until that time, the assurance of their foreign minister had not trickled down to the IRGC.
Yes, so there is clearly a problem there in terms of coordination and communication between the ruling dispensation and the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, which you now say has become a virtually autonomous entity. But many thanks for your views there, Admiral Sinha. We'll slip into a short break right now. We'll continue our coverage on the other side.